Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, it's Football at 4.
Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It's brought to you by PropSwap, America's sports betting marketplace. Sell your sports bets, take your profit, find out how. Go to PropSwap.com, download the PropSwap app today. Congratulations, Charles in Vineland. He is our latest qualifier for Pick Your Trip. Charles has a chance to win an Eagles road trip where he gets to pick the Eagles road game of his choice. We'll pay for the airfare, hotel, the pregame tailgate party, and supply 2 tickets to the Eagles road game of one lucky listener's choice. It's all live. April 28th, the day of the first round of the NFL Draft, live at Slack Tide Brewing Company, and it's thanks to PhillySportsTrips.com and Ernest & Sons Old Fashioned Butcher Shop in Brigantine. All right, the NFL Draft, 16 days away. Adam Caplan, we're getting closer, and the Eagles, I guess, are closer to making some narrowing down some decisions here. They're probably, going through this list of meetings and individual interviews, and I guess they're probably getting a better feel of what they think about these prospects.
Yeah, Mike, actually, the way it works is, you're on it. The pre-draft visits end next Wednesday. They have to end, or next Thursday. It's a week before the draft is the rule. And then the crazy thing is you're allowed to work up players up to the day before the draft. So, yeah, you're right. This is the busy season. All the pro days wrap up around the country this week. And we'll get to someone who would sign off of a pro day workout in a minute. But, yeah, that's what's going on. And they actually had some big-time players in on Monday morning, guys who flew in Sunday and met with the team on Monday morning. So, yeah, it's big. Yeah, you're right. There's a lot going on.
Now, what are fans, Adam, supposed to make of some of these visits? Guys like Sauce Gardner, who is a top 10 thought to be picked. Matt Corral, a quarterback. George Pickens, a wide receiver. What do fans, how are they supposed to read into the people that the Eagles select to meet with?
Let me give you a general answer for all 32 teams. You have 30 visits. They're called these pre-draft visits, your top 30 visits. You're bringing them in for a specific purpose. It is absolutely, positively not an indication they're going to draft a player, but they want more information. Sometimes it's medical. For instance, they had George Pickens in from Georgia. Pickens was in, I think, Monday morning. He had an ACL injury in November of 2020. He is a tremendous football player. Had he not had the ACL injury, as Greg Cosell from NFL Films told me, he might have been his top receiver for this draft. That's how gifted he is. And the Eagles, as we all know, they need receivers in the worst way. They need not one, they need 2 by the start of training camp. They need competition, they need explosiveness, they need talent. They're still a bottom feeder, other than DeVante Smith. They're a bottom feeder team and receiver. They're just not good enough. We all know that. This is not a secret. So George Pickens, who's very gifted, who's got great size, just under 6'3". By the way, he did come back for the final 5 games of Georgia's season. And also, I know you followed college football. Georgia, as one person told me, might have at least 10 players drafted this year.
Wow.
They have a great club. Obviously, they're a great team this past season. They have a really good draft class.
Yeah, and I guess Jamison Williams, he's another guy. You have a lot of guys, a lot of wide receivers coming off injury. The other Alabama receiver, John Mechie, the third, right?
Yeah.
He's another guy who is coming off an ACL tear.
By the way, with that, Mike, he tore his ACL around roughly a month
in the game
before.
against Georgia.
Now, I was told without the ACL injury, Mechie was going to be a second-round pick. Jamison Williams, top 10 and top 12 without the ACL injury. I still think he's got a shot to be drafted before the end of the first round. Why? As I understand, isolated ACL, A. B, the way it works with drafting player who are coming off a major injury, particularly ACL or an Achilles, if that general manager is very secure in his job, like a Howie Roseman, who just signed a recent extension, you don't worry about drafting a player. I know people bring up the corner from Washington in 2017, second round. I'm sorry,
Sidney Jones.
Yeah, Sidney Jones. Thank you. That one was a little different. That was less about the injury. It's more about competitiveness and why he didn't make it. It actually had very little to do with the injury. It was Just the lack of his will to be great. They didn't know this pre-draft. Good kid off the field, but on the field, he should have been better. He was fine. The second year, he physically was fine, but he just never got to where they needed him from a mental standpoint on the field and competitiveness. And he's moved on, but you know what? He's kind of revived his career with Seattle, and he was with Jacksonville. But when you look at, you're right, Mike, a lot of receivers have injuries. And another little fact, when we did this, the next inside the draft intel with Cosell, with Greg Cosell, with Moshe and I, drops tomorrow. This one is incredible. We did corner and safety. No, I'm sorry. We did D and D tackle. We did corner and safety last week. One of the things that Greg and I talked about, it was very obvious. Easily a dozen corners are going to be drafted within the first 3 rounds were former wide receivers in college. I've never seen so many cornerbacks over 6 feet in my career. 19 years covering this business.
Wow.
Never seen anything like it.
That's pretty good intel there, and you can check that out on the Inside the Birds platform. While we're talking receivers, let's stick with receivers. And Jalen Reagor, I know people saw some reporting that Reagor could be drawing some trade interest, and people would be thrilled probably to move on from him. But what do we know about the potential of a Jalen Reagor having interest?
Yeah, so you could read this piece. It's really funny. So Jeff wrote a piece midweek last week, and he just put one line about the Eagles have gotten calls about him. There was no blog, because we get a lot of, we appreciate it, although they're not always blogged correctly, but nevertheless, we appreciate the interest from the news aggregators and bloggers, which I was once a proud blogger in the early 2000s. But anyway, so no one picked up on it. And then all of a sudden, like wildfire, I guess these people wanted to wait till Monday. And Jeff's has been quoted everywhere. And to the point where, he's been doing a bunch of interviews on it. And it's really not a big deal. Like, I get what Jeff was talking about. I asked him, I said, what's your intel? What are you seeing on this? Jeff's understanding is, from talking to teams around the league, that teams are curious, because what happens is every NFL team, all 31 teams other than the Eagles, know that Reagor's been underachieving. And we've seen some top receivers being traded. So every team, just to explain to you what happens this time of year, all 32 teams have trade calls. They all call, hey, if we're on the clock and we don't get our guy, we're looking to move out. For instance, I'll give you an example. The Panthers and Eagles had several talks before the draft last year. We reported, and the Bears called the Eagles several times because they wound up making the trade, I think, with the Giants because they wanted Fields. So this is what happens. And also, in the course of conversation, hey, Reagor hasn't done well. What are you guys doing with him? That kind of thing. Mm-hmm. It's really not a big deal. But and the agent is he's got a really good agent, Jeff Nally, who's pretty aggressive and knows the league really well. He's very well connected. I'm sure he would be checking in to see, with the Eagles' permission, if there's anything out there. But we're going to have more reporting Thursday morning. We've got some really good stuff coming on this. But just understand, the Eagles will not be giving them away. I know that he doesn't really have a role right now. The head coach made it clear. Niquez Watkins is the 2. We know what they try to do in free agency, which means they really only see Reagor as their 4th receiver. Kind of hard to justify to keep this guy on the roster. Thinking like he's going to contribute as that. It's just not fair to him. But we'll see. We'll see what happens at draft time.
Yeah, that'll definitely be something. I mean, if they got a call and someone, I don't know, if someone said, I'll give you a 5th, would that interest them? Do you think? No,
definitely not. No, he guy's a former first-round pick. Look, I'll give you an example. Last year in our reporting, the Panthers were among 3 teams to really add interest in Dillard. The Eagles wouldn't even, I hate to say this, it's hard to I don't know how to say this or term this, but they actually were not listening to trade offers. I was surprised. They called it right. They had injury in their offensive line. Mailata was healthy, at left tackle, and obviously he was great. But we remembered what happened with all the injuries they had their offensive line. Just the Eagles value more than probably any NFL team. Every NFL team loves to have depth in the offensive line, but the Eagles take to it a very good extreme. They just have a knack for understanding the offensive line depth, and I give Andy Reid and Joe Banner credit for this and Howie Roseman learned under them. You cannot have enough good offensive linemen, and that's just the way Eagles see it.
Now, Dillard's a guy that you think would have interest. Should the Eagles be interested in moving him or not really?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. If the Eagles were willing to move him, yes. Here's the problem. See, you know what's funny? Someone asked me this. This is a great question. I was surprised Dillard was not involved in the Saints trade because, remember, Teron Armstead, their franchise tackle, signed with the Dolphins $15.5 million a year. They don't have a left tackle, the Saints on the roster. I don't know why which it would tell me, Mike, they didn't want him. That would be my read on it. I don't know that for a fact, but think about that. If you're the Saints and you don't have a left tackle, and why wouldn't you want to get Andre Dillard and include that trade last week? And that maybe that second doesn't go in the trade, but
I would think that the Eagles, any phone call, they could get a question about. They've got good depth. Hey, what are you going to do with Sayamala this year? Are you going to play Driscoll? Are you going to play Sayamala?
Right, exactly.
What are you going to do with
They
Herbig?
love Driscoll. Yeah, it's funny. Isaac Sayamala, he's on the final year of his deal. They have to figure out. He's a good player, but he's had a lot of injuries. I don't know what they're going to do with him. It's they tendered Nate Herbig. He's back for a year. They have that. Look, they value Jack Driscoll as a swing tackle, right tackle, a guard. We know that Dickerson will be starting at left guard, Kelsey at center. They've got a decision to make. They got to figure things out here. They've got a lot of moving parts, Mike. I'm glad you brought this up. They absolutely do.
Yeah, the offensive line. They've got guys not starters that would start on most teams in this league. Dillard probably being one of them. We'll see what they do with Sayamala. Does he play right guard? Does he go to left guard? Does Driscoll get the right guard spot? Do they battle it out? I mean, there's a lot there, I think.
It is, yeah. In fact, the future, right, on their offensive line is Mailata for several years at left tackle, Dickerson at left guard. Now, that's the other question is, will he move to center? We were actually reported this a year ago, and we'll be the first to admit we thought he was drafted to take Kelsey's job. Not so fast. They have not made that decision. Their preference is to leave Dickerson at left guard, and whether it's, say, Malo moving from guard to center or drafting someone to play center, Jack Driscoll, outside shot. And also, they love this Jack Anderson, who they signed off of, I believe, Buffalo's practice squad. They think they kind of hit gold with him. Yeah. And I can tell you, the Bills are super bleeped. They tried to keep him. They were not happy that Anderson did not stay. They wanted him to wait a couple weeks. They were going to sign him off their practice squad, but they didn't, and he went to the Eagles. So you're right, Mike, Dave. And obviously Lane Johnson's the right tackle until he retires. Then Jack Driscoll probably would be his replacement.
I know you guys on the podcast, Adam Caplan, Inside the Birds podcast, with me here, discussed the Tyrann Mathieu stuff. I think it was you, correct me if I'm wrong, that mentioned that they made a significant offer to Marcus Williams.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So do you think, Adam Caplan, that they would prefer a veteran safety, and if they can get Mathieu for their price, that's their preference, or would they rather finally draft and groom a guy?
Mike, it's funny because, and the guy wasn't criticizing us. He said that he said that we have a Facebook message board, a Facebook group, and the guy who wasn't criticizing us. He said, look, he goes, listen to that show. He can't tell what the best move for the Eagles would be because Rodney McLeod didn't come back. We'll I'll give you one nugget of the four that I have on it. He's got a big injury history. He's clearly near the end of the line here. Great Eagle, by the way. What a signing in 2016. Obviously, they would not have. Everything that he led, his leadership, and just what a great signing was.
Yeah.
But they chose Harris over him because Harris's experience in the scheme.
I asked Moshe this the other day. I was interested. I was going to ask you the same thing. Why Harris over McLeod? It's
clearly because of the D coordinator. More familiarity with him, knows him. That's why, by the way, that's 1,000% why Harris signed there. That is the reason. But yes, they need to get younger. That Kevon Wallace doesn't look like he's going to make it as a starter. In fact, I'll go out and say that barring something highly unforeseen, we won't be a starter for the Eagles. It's just not going to work.
Mm-hmm.
It's more of a box safety. Marcus Epps, who they claimed off waivers, a former 6th-round pick, has been a good story. I don't know what. Mike, here's my problem with this whole situation. Being that they made our understanding of the offer to Marcus Williams, it was almost the same exact offer that the Ravens made. He just chose to play with in a scheme that he liked more. Obviously the Ravens have been unbelievable for defense for 20 some odd years, so we get that. But the Eagles were clearly going to they wanted to make a big splash at safety. Okay, Tyrann Mathieu is significantly older. He turns 30 next month, which means he's 30 in NFL years. A little nugget for you. The way NFL executives think of players, it's whatever you turn opening day. That's your age. So if you turn 30 in August, you're 30 right now. That's the way they look at you. They don't look at you at 30 then. They look at you 30 now.
Mm-hmm.
So he does turn 30 next month, and that's what he is. I'd have to look this up. I don't know of any other team. I'm sure there might be one or two. Name another team that's starting two safeties at 30 years or older. That's just not a recipe for success.
Yeah.
And Jeff's reporting. Jeff had a great nugget on our show that from his sources, chief sources, and we know that they didn't offer him a contract. They just don't think he's the same player.
Mathieu.
Yeah. No,
okay.
Could he? I think the word I got.
Right. Is he still the same playmaker? Is he the honey badger?
Well, he's got 2 years left in him. That's it. He wants here's the problem. He wants a multi-year deal.
Right.
And my sense is the Eagles aren't going in that direction right now. They could change their mind. So, and then, look, he wants a significant contract. Tom Condon gets major contracts. I'd be shocked if the Eagles gave him more than $10 million a year. Shocked.
Kyle Hamilton, no shot at 15, just to put that out there, right?
No, the internet, Greg Cosell calls them internet gurus. I kind of laugh. Folks, the 40 time is not a big deal for a safety. It's just not. It's not the way teams look at it. It's the 10. It's 20 yards. 40, it's just not a big deal.
Yeah.
I'd be shocked if he dropped out of the top 10. Now, not everybody loves Kyle Hamilton. He's a very good football player, the best safety for this draft. If you listen to our last show, Greg outlines a really good safety from another Big Ten school, which you should hear what it's Notre Dame and is in one conference, and this other player's in a different conference, but not too far away. There are other good safeties in this draft. They don't need to do. I'd be shocked if they took a safety. That's not. I believe though. I've talked about this on a show last week. The Eagles try to be extremely aggressive in free agency. The Eagles have 2 first-round picks. They've got 2 next year. It would not shock me at all if they traded up if the right player drops. We'll have those players for you in our future Inside the Bird shows.
All right, 16 days to the draft. Adam Caplan, tell us about DeVante Allen and any expectations for this. Well, I'm always interested why these kind of signings are made.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's DeVante Allen or DeVante Allen. I'm not sure the pronunciation, but my understanding is he's a kickoff returner and wide receiver. He's not a punt returner, barring something that I'm not aware of. Unbelievable track star, 3-time national champion and the 110, 2-time Olympian. Here's what happened. A bunch of teams got excited. His pro day, you have to understand, he hasn't played football in 6 years. He has not been a factor in football in 8 years, since 2014. He had a great pro day. He showed that he has had ACL reconstruction on both knees. Showed that he's healthy. He met, I was told, Thursday with the coaches and front office, and he signed Friday. It's it's a dart. Joe Banner told us on Inside the Birds last year. The Eagles in rounds 5 through 7 with dart throwing. You just take a shot on a corner or a linebacker, particularly linebacker, because we know they haven't paid attention to the linebacker. This is just a dart throw. The guy is explosive. You know how bad their return game was last season? Like Jake Elliott was great. They fixed Jake Elliott as a kicker.
Yeah.
But they got to get the return game going. I'd be shocked if he plays receiver, but because their plan is to fortify receiver, but they need the kickoff returner in the worst way.
All right, Adam Caplan, 16 days to the draft. We'll have plenty more storylines leading up to it, more visits, and, of course, a lot of NFL news between now and then. A lot of I heard somebody say there's already been 6 first-round draft picks traded this year already. So who knows if draft night we won't see as much movement. And there's not a lot of quarterbacks to go up for.
Well, I talked to a team in the top 10. I can't go into the player that they're targeting. I could just say that, if they don't get their player, they're definitely willing to trade out because they've kind of made it clear to teams that have called, hey, if our guy's not there, whatever player that is, whatever position that is, rather, they'll look to trade out. But yeah, you're right. I don't look. The Metcalf stuff's all internet rumors. None of it's true. My understanding, Seahawks absolutely don't want to trade Metcalf. With a caveat, I would never say never. It would be embarrassing for them to trade Metcalf because they got that one right. They typically don't extend players until August, on the last year of their contract. Sometimes they don't at all. They wait till after the season's over. But now, if Metcalf caused a problem, if he pulled a Stephon Diggs and he made it uncomfortable, that changes everything. Like if he wanted to be out, that may change their narrative. But my understanding is they don't want to trade him. We'll see. Never say never. But we know how much the Eagles liked him before the draft. The reason why they didn't, his neck. But I don't know if the neck's an issue anymore.
All right, Adam Caplan, InsideTheBirds.com and the Inside the Birds podcast, the Intel Show with Greg Cosell, and all the great stuff at the Inside the Birds platform, and right here every day on Football at 4. Adam Caplan, I will talk to you, my friend.
You got it. Thank you.
All right, Adam will be back later on this week.